Preparing the stream. Triple Crowns Royal Family. We are back. So good to see everybody out there. So happy you all could join us. Another blessed day, y'all. Another blessed day. We are joined today by, of course, the brothers, the Triple Crowns, Brother Tyrone, Brother JP, Triple Producer Shuri, but today, Mr. Charles Britt, who's going to talk to us about technology in the Black community. Massively important topic in these days and times. Have been, are now, and for the future. We must broach and really aggressively understand this topic and where we fit in. So we're so glad to have Mr. Britt with us, Brother John's esteemed contact and guest. We're going to start it off with this question, though, family, which is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you with technology? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you with technology? Brother Tyrone would tell y'all to share the live. Come on in, put your comments and questions in the chat. But answer the question right now. Don't try to dodge the question, Tyrone. And everybody, not Tyrone, I'm just saying Tyrone, letting them know not to dodge the question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you with technology? I will go first, brothers. And I will go first not because I'm the greatest amongst us here. I'm going to go first because I'm the least amongst us here. Anybody that knows me knows my struggles with tech of all kind. I don't know why that is. As much as I try, it seems to always be some small issue that gets me wired up and tripped up. We're going to save Brother John and, of course, our esteemed guest, Mr. Britt, for later on. So, Brother Tyrone, if you don't mind, real quick, how do you respond to that?
So,
I didn't give a number. I'm sorry. Let me give a number. I'm sorry. My number is 3.
I would say I'm about a 7. Only because I think I'm fairly well, but I know it's more that I can learn about it, and there's something that I don't know. But I also give myself a 7 because I usually can adapt quick. Once I learn with technology, I adapt pretty quick. So, yeah.
All right, Brother Jean. This is not fair. That's not even fair. you have to tell us about upper echelon technology. You and Mr. Britt, y'all have to. So y'all can't talk about laptop, cell phones. Like, go ahead, brother.
I'd say I'm about around a 9, maybe 9.5. There's always more to learn. There's always more to grasp. I don't know everything. I never protest to, but I can damn sure learn it and find the answer. So I'm good.
All right. So that leaves our esteemed guest, Mr. Britt. How about it? 1 to 10, your comfort level of tech.
Well, you got the wrong person in. Sounds like JP should be speaking because I put myself at an 8. Because even though I work in tech every day, there's so much outside of my day job that I don't know. And like he said, there's always more to learn. So if a 10 is the expert, I would say I'm about an 8. But, pushing toward 9, hoping to catch up.
All right. So let's start by saying, I just want to say thank you at the top of the show, gentlemen, because we are getting so much support from people on all of these platforms. And we thank you all for your continual questions and your comments. And, last week you were talking amongst yourselves. This is how we build conversation. This is a very crucial conversation that we would hope that you pass along to folks. And the great thing is that we have technology levels of all kinds. We have an 8, we have a 9. I myself, I'm glad I said a 3, Tyrone, and nothing higher than that, or a 1, whatever I said. So this is great. I'm sure we're going to talk about entry-level technology, and we'll expand out as we have our expert here joining us and our resident expert here every week. We just never broach the topic. But Mr. Britt, why is this an important topic to you, technology? You actually I want everybody to know, you gave us the title to the show, technology in the Black community. Why does it matter? I mean, why is it so big to you, sir?
I believe for me, tech is such a huge topic for the Black community because it is yet another area where, we've created a divide in our country where Blacks are being marginalized and providing discrimination and not, proper access to resources through tech, to opportunities through tech that other folks and communities in the United States are getting. So it's critical that we've seen from the pandemic how important technology was to the way our society pivoted during the COVID-19 pandemic to doing virtual learning, to doing remote working, how pivotal technology is. And it shows that it's going to grow. And those who have access to it, those who understand it, those who are connected, and those who are working in it are the ones that thrived last year. So it's important that if our community is going to thrive beyond this year, beyond 2021, beyond, this pandemic, technology is going to be a big part of our lives. And it's important for our members of our community to be well educated and connected in that world.
Thank you so much, Mr. Britt. And two things. One, I have to shout out our super producer, Shuri, who is a tech savant. If you ask me, we both work in education, and she has brought so much new technology for the scholars at our particular school to leap ahead. It's just phenomenal. So I don't know how she would rate herself, but I would give her definitely a 10. But Mr. Britt, speaking of schools, speaking of education, speaking about the Black community, one of the bastions that are still left within our community is the schoolhouse, is education. And I would say, I know where we are in my particular place in Maryland, I would say that our school, the local school system here, I won't lift the name, failed our students, a largely Black municipality, failed them gravely during the pandemic. Number one, there was no one-to-one technology in our particular city.
Yes.
Okay, fine. But when you see a need, in my opinion, the infrastructure should have been built out so that a virtual plan could have been not easily navigated, that's understandable, but at least attempted and navigated. And in my opinion, it wasn't. And so in the rush to me to reopen schools, systems are talking about, learning lab and learning gap. We look at some of our white or non-Black counterparts in particular districts, and those devices and the infrastructure was already in place. So they really didn't lose a step. Can you speak a little bit to, the importance of school systems, school districts, especially where Black and brown people are involved, have the virtual technology to push us to the next level?
Sure. So what this is often called, and you'll hear people talk about it in the media and in reporting, it's called the digital divide. And the digital divide has been around for a very long time. Initially, when the digital divide started, it was those who had access to computers and those that didn't. Like myself, when I went to college, I don't know about JP, we both went to college together at Capitol Tech. When I arrived at Capitol, I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a laptop. So I was relying upon the computers in the labs in the late 90s to be able to do my homework and do my labs when there were other folks who were coming to campus with computers. So that was the digital divide then. Early 2000s, the digital divide became who had access to the internet. So you had a computer, but do you have access to the internet? So again, in the communities like the ones you described where you live and other communities of color, they may have had computers in the school, but they weren't connected to the internet. So now we've moved into another facet of this digital divide. Some people, I did some research before I came on to talk with you all, they're calling it the digital divide 3.0, where now you're seeing the pandemic has showed that all of these things have actually gotten worse. Access to computers, access to internet, and now access to the knowledge and resources to build on all the things that we just talked about. So I'll be honest with you and say that I have done a lot of work around education, around technology, particularly in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax County, although that's not where I live, very connected to the schools in Fairfax, have been involved in a lot of the STEM outreach there. And I will tell you, you made a comment about the fact that all the other counties were actually ready and supportive. Well, one of the biggest fallouts in Fairfax County that actually made the local news was, as you know, Fairfax is very wealthy, access to technology, but guess who they failed when the pandemic started? Black and brown children. They were the only children who still did not have access to mobile devices or laptops and access to the internet when that happened. So they weren't even prepared. And they spent just as much money or more than probably your local school district, and they still weren't prepared and were in a position where they weren't prepared for, again, this marginalized population of people of color. It was like, how did everybody else in the county move forward? But then nobody else, you know, in certain parts didn't. So it became, again, this situation where the pandemic showed that a lot of these inequalities that we talk about all the time, that people ignore, became very visible, even in a place that's full of wealth, full of access to technology. And they were quickly able to do what you said, pivot and provide one-to-one devices to all the students. And they were able to do the virtual learning. But now that we're returning back to this face-to-face, there's still a reckoning that needs to be made, not only in Northern Virginia, but around the country, about making sure that our children have access to everything, that all children have access to the technology, the internet, and then the education that they need to succeed. Because that's an example of no matter where you live in the United States, you still will find yourself being a part of that marginalized community if the right access, if the right work is not being done all the time, not just when there's an issue or when someone brings it up, but the work is being done on a continual basis to make sure there's equity across these educational institutions.
Thank you for that, brothers. I'll yield. If not, I got 1,000,001 for Mr. Britt.
Go ahead, brother. You can go ahead.
Well, my question would be for those of us. Well, here's one thing that I also thought about last year, and honestly, to be honest, it wasn't until last year, because I think most of us come from, I don't know about you, Mr. Britt, but John, myself, and Tyrone, either come from city or suburban areas. Mm-hmm. We forget about the large population of Black people that live in rural, sub-rural areas.
Yes.
Shore is close to us here in Maryland, the southern part of Southern Maryland even, and right there close to you, where you've done some of your work, and areas throughout the country. We forget about those folks that live in those areas.
Yes.
How would a person such as yourself either provide technology or advise them on how to acquire technology that would help them?
Yeah. And what you're speaking about, again, is this digital 3.0. What they talked about in the recent article, it was either Forbes or CIO magazine talked about this digital 3.0, is just exactly what you said. We've had the challenge of the equipment, we've had the challenge of the internet, and now it's also a challenge of demographics, where we are leaving rural communities behind because large internet service providers, who I won't name, are not providing access to those communities because they don't see it being financially viable for them. They don't care that those folks are being left behind and don't have access to that. And it boggles me because of how much education is now utilizing Google, Google Education and Google platforms and all these other technical tools that if someone's doing their homework, no one's going around selling encyclopedias door to door. So where do students supposed to go in order to research information for their school products if you don't provide them access to high-speed internet? And internet is one thing, but if you've got to download a video, if you've got to look at a high-resolution photo, high-speed internet is going to be important. And we all know that when something starts buffering, imagine we get frustrated. Imagine what happens with kids when they start seeing that thing spinning on they're done, cancel, the screen is closed. So providing that access is important. And what I would do, or what someone like you could do to address that, or what I would do to bring them technology, is first of all, awareness. People have to be made aware in the major cities that are around these communities. So if you're talking about Southern Maryland, the people that are in Prince George's County should care about their community that also lives outside of Prince George's County. I mean, there are a lot of African Americans and folks that have moved to that southern part of Maryland, and was going to be a part of my conversation with you all this evening about why this is important to the Black community, because we have an obligation to actually go out and help others in our community that aren't as fortunate as we are to know about this stuff. They don't know how to advocate to their legislator. They don't know how to advocate to their local government or their utility provider, whoever in Maryland is regulating utilities. There should be a conversation happening with them about why that investment is not being made. They're paying taxes just like you're paying taxes in the suburb of DC. Why is it that these providers that I won't name are not providing that access? I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, and while the city of Indianapolis is well connected, there's not much else to Indiana. So when you think about people that are in Gary or South Bend, people think about those folks aren't beaming with high-speed internet access. So for me, it is an issue of equity when, if I don't live in a major city, I can't get to that same access to those same opportunities, because it also limits my ability to access to knowledge. to training. If I want to take a free training that's available online through Google or Amazon, I can't download the videos or download the materials because it's going to take forever if I'm not on a high-speed internet connection. So you find that people people of color across the nation are being disenfranchised if that access is not there. And we've got to be advocates for it. But thankfully, now that we've gone virtual, it's been much easier for me because I've had some conversations with organizations in Alabama. I've talked to some groups in Detroit recently. They're excited. They're like, wow, we've never had contact to people who have the knowledge that you have, and you want to share with us on how to connect our youth and our young people to tech jobs. That was the conversation I was having with them. Now that we're virtual, I can reach these folks. I can talk to them, but it does go back to what you just said, the high-speed internet. But then the other challenge that the person told me in Detroit and also in Alabama was, well, can they take the training on their cell phones? I'm like, probably not. Well, guess what? They don't have laptops. So we're back to the problem that we started back in the late 90s. And it's like, oh my God, this is a vicious cycle of like, when are we just going to get to the point that we're tackling this for our community? I don't care how many apps we create. I don't care how many TikTok videos we make. I don't care how Instagram famous we become. If we don't connect our community the right way, we're going to be left behind. And it is just going to be a joke and a laugh and a meme that we're all going to be known for in about 6 years because everybody else has moved on to something else. They're making money, they're getting jobs, and we're still sitting back just being consumers of this technology and not using it to our community's benefit.
Wow. Wow. You know what, Brother Tyrone, I think we found our crown jewel on the show. Mr. Britt, what we do is we try to find someone who is unknown in our community or in the nation that is doing things such as yourself to help uplift our community whose names may never be called. But we're hoping that after this, particular podcast, people will be emailing you, texting you, calling you, so that you can help advise and advocate on their behalf, because this is crucial and important. And you're very welcome. And also, it's very sad, man. Like you said, and I was thinking how Jean, how the stench of racism and white supremacy permeates every single aspect of our society. There's not one thing that is left, untainted by it. Right, absolutely. And this is a perfect example of that. I'm going to yield right now, Brother Tyrone. We have anybody out there in the family chiming in or making any noise? I got you, Tyrone. Thank you, brother. I see it now. So yeah, this conversation, John, we're gonna definitely make commercials after this one because this needs to be had. And what's interesting that you point out, Mr. Britt, is that it's not like we're not using the technology. It's not like we're not patronizing the technology, but we don't use it and are unable in many cases to use it to our advantage. To point out what you said about the cell phones, a lot of our students in our particular district, Tyrone, I don't know why I said I couldn't say it. Baltimore City. A lot of those kids, those poor kids, and I don't mean economically poor, I mean the situation has caused this type of poverty, technology, and that's what I'm talking about. We're going and doing their schoolwork on smartphones, and sharing a smartphone throughout the family in some cases to do homework, to do. I mean, it's ludicrous. The district provided, if you will, some hot spots, some little mobile hot spots one time. And they were sparse. And just now, at the tail end of us going, I won't say of the pandemic, but us rearing up to go back to school, are they providing them again, but not wholesale? It was a mess. And so once again, our community was left to kind of fend for themselves, to do what they could do. They did ultimately start rolling out one-on-one devices, but only a portion of those were new. And I'm sitting back and I'm like, I know the district or the city has a contract with someone or can get someone, even if it's an MOU, to provide every kid in the city with what they need to be successful in the classroom.
It's very easy to do. I mean, these devices, I mean, our economic counterparts around the world, Again, I'm trying to name any countries, but our economic counterparts around the world are producing these devices, a dime a dozen. So it's not hard to get someone a Chromebook, although Best Buy may be selling it for $200 or $300. It probably took $10 to make, relatively speaking. So these school districts, including the ones I've mentioned in Northern Virginia, around the country, they have access to companies who are coming in and selling this technology to these school districts. So anything that school district needs, when they come to the table asking, that's one of the things that you can ask for. So getting the technology isn't the challenge. It's really, honestly, I've seen the communities I've worked with, a challenge of the education. It's the leadership's fear that if we provide them this technology, we won't know how to educate them to use it. So it's best that we keep them ignorant of it so that we don't appear ignorant, that we don't know what we're doing. And I was a fierce advocate of challenging that mindset in the school district that I was working in, that we're not going to limit access to certain things. Like, I'm a huge fan of cybersecurity, and well, a huge fan, I work in it, I'm sorry. So I get paid. So I'm not a fan of it, I get paid to do it. I'm in the field and I love it. And we were trying to grant access to a lot of the students in that county, access to a virtual platform where they could learn hacking techniques, ethical hacking techniques. Well, the school district refused to implement and grant access to that site because they were telling us that there was a technology issue. And we kept hearing technology issue. And I'm like, well, you're talking to a cyber person. So could you explain to me what this technical issue is? And they were like, oh, shoot. So when everything came to blows about really what it was, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer of this school district, had to tell me it was really just the school district's fear that the students would be doing things on the network that they would not be able to control. I'm like, well, you do know that this is a virtual sandbox environment, so they're not going to be doing anything on your network. And she was like, oh, we didn't know that. And I'm like, really? You're the CIO and you don't know what a virtual environment is. So when you talk about access to what you're describing, like when they're not getting what they need, sometimes it takes us, again, in our community, being advocates for our children to go in and help our school districts, to talk to them, to have conversations, be on advisory boards, be engaged as volunteers sometimes. I was in this role because I was volunteering on an advisory committee that was helping the school district enhance access to technology so I could provide that input. Well, guess what happened in 2020 during the pandemic? All of a sudden, the school district gave all the students access to this virtual platform now. So what happened to all these challenges they talked about? That's what I mean by what you described as what can we do? We've got to be advocates in as much as those of us who know technology, because I understand you're on the scale of a 2 and a 3. But for everyone else who has that 8, that 9, that 10, find a way to be an advocate for our youth. And not only just our youth, another population that I'm really, really fearful of is our senior citizen population. They were one of the biggest to be taken advantage of during the pandemic. From the coronavirus check scams to, you name it, they were being taken advantage of because now they're having to do things virtually. So when they have medical appointments they need to go to, when they have, visits with their kids that they want to do on Zoom, you can imagine what they've been exposed to as far as ransomware and phishing scams and all this that they don't know anything about. And they get hacked. And to them, it's like, oops, I'm just gonna, if you've seen those proverbial messages on Facebook, someone hacked my account. If you that's not nothing to just like post and tell people. You actually need to cancel your account or create a new one, or at least change your password and understand what it takes to clean up something that happens like that. So again, this conversation about how tech is impacting our community in so many different ways, we're vulnerable a lot of ways. Not to say that it's wholesale everyone. Trust and believe there are tons of people in the African-American community that are doing well in tech, that are creating solutions that are helping our community, that are developing apps that are helping us with mental health and access to banking and things of that nature. But I'm saying on a large scale, there's so much work just on what you've said in Baltimore, which makes me shake my head because it's not just Baltimore. These same issues exist down in the DC area. They exist in Detroit. And it's like, what can we do to elevate this conversation and use technology, like you said, to our advantage? It's the one thing that we can do that we don't have to ask permission for. We've already got it in our hand, so we don't have to ask anybody for it. We just need to utilize it and use it to our benefit to help our community. And that can be easily done through, these types of conversations, through workshops, through using these virtual platforms to get the word out and connect us. I think what's missing is oftentimes we're just not connected enough. We don't know, like you said, I appreciate you creating a platform for me to have this discussion. We don't know enough people to really kind of expose folks to where they need to go, who they need to talk to. And so we do defer to posting things on social media or talking to our kids about things. And sometimes the kids don't even know. My mother, leverages my niece as her go-to for technology. And I'm like, but wasn't that my niece that was just twerking on Instagram? I'm like, you didn't have the proper controls on her profile. And I saw that. Like, how did I even know she was even on Instagram? So first of all, let's talk access on Instagram. Before you start going to her talking about how she's going to set up your digital banking.
Right. Wow. That went left, but that's a good point. No, that's good. That's a really good point. And I was gonna say, Tyrone and I, Mr. Britt, had the opportunity on we have an educational podcast to interview. Yeah, we had an opportunity to interview educators, parents, and in some cases some scholars from Philadelphia, Chicago, and New York City. And like we said, these things are thematic, systemic in each of these communities. And we hadn't had an opportunity to interview anyone from any rural areas, but like we said earlier, I'm sure it is the same. If you just jumped in, we are with tech expert Charles Britt, just discussing a wealth of information that you need to listen to and also share. This gentleman is just not only exposing inequalities, but also providing us with some solutions for technological loss in our community. So happy to have him on.
Thank you.
John, you have anything?
I'm just Charles, I'm so impressed with you and everything that you've been able to do and all the accolades and everything that you earn, you definitely deserve. Charles is a very hardworking man. He is for the people, of the people, with the people, about the people. He will give you the shirt off his back, and he is by no means a slouch. This brother, is giving out a lot of information that it's here. It's unfortunate that things are just getting exposed anyway, right? No matter how much they try to hide it, it's getting exposed. And the reality of it at the end of the day and at the beginning, what are we passing on to our youth at this point? What are we doing? It seems as though a lot of this is being passed on. A lot of things that are being passed on are, all right, we know about this, so what are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? How are we going to accomplish this X, Y, and Z? And some people have answers and some people don't. Some people are still searching for answers, and some people just are withholding information for their benefit. So there's a lot of groundwork that we still have to do. And I'm just grateful that, Charles, you're out in the community and you're making a difference. And you've always made a difference. And, I'm extremely grateful for that. Tyrone, we got anything? We got anybody asking any questions or anything, brother?
Not at the moment. It seems like everybody's kind of quiet. I would like, I would like to say though, if we're talking about practicality, so we're talking about, let's talk about our seniors for a moment. People that have not had a lot of experience with technology for a moment. Threes, people like me, but 1 to 3s who try their hardest and to be, just all upset at the whole situation. How would you guide folks who are inexperienced and maybe are kind of gun shy, if you will, with starting technology? How would you advise them or guide them into not being afraid and learning these, maybe some practical tools to learn and get started?
So for me, I would say, one, don't be afraid. I know technology can be intimidating to a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. It's intimidating me. There are certain topics in cybersecurity and technology that I don't touch because honestly, I feel like it's intimidating me. I don't know a lot about an artificial intelligence. I don't know about a lot about augmented reality. I mean, these are conversations that are coming up every day in a conversation, not only in the workplace, but just around the globe about where technology is going. And I don't say much, it's like, I don't know much about that topic, but it is helpful to anybody who wants to learn a particular technology to start slow. You don't have to become an expert overnight. And I'm a firm believer that, I can tell you just from my field in cybersecurity, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity. You need to know just enough to make it practical for you and how it's going to benefit your life or goals that you may have for using that technology. You don't need to become an expert in it. So point number one, what we're on now, YouTube is going to be your best friend. There are tons of resources on YouTube, short videos, long videos. I prefer the short ones that can walk you through the basics of anything, such as how to, understanding internet access, understanding what is Wi-Fi, how to password protect or create a strong password. What does it mean to set, privacy settings within Facebook and Instagram and Twitter? All these different topics that many people from, senior citizens always down to parents who are dealing with young children want to know, how do I leverage this technology? How do I protect it? How to keep it safe? Those YouTube videos are of course, helpful. Always tapping into someone who understands technology. That can kind of give you like the real deal. Like it may be your younger child, your niece, your nephew, somebody who works in technology. Don't be afraid to ask. I am that go-to person for a lot of folks, but I'm often surprised at people that don't come to me for technology. And I laugh at them. I'm not gonna lie. I laugh. It's like, so I have friends who'll be like, oh, I had this laptop problem. I'm like, oh, what happened? I went to the Geek Squad, and I'm like, let me hear this. I'm just waiting. I'm like, okay, tell me. So what did the Geek Squad tell you? And they're like, they told me I need a new laptop. I said, oh, really? Is that what they told you? I'm like, well, technically you don't need one. So if you bought it, great. But had you come to me first, I would have told you X, Y, Z. So take advantage of the people around you who understand the technology. I'm good at that. I own an iPhone, but a lot of my friends will actually show me things on my iPhone that I don't use. I'm like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. Like, so I don't mind going to them and say that I'm ignorant, that I don't know. Can you explain this to me? There's also places to take free courses. It's amazing how much free educational content that's out there. You don't need to pay $30,000, $25,000 a year to get a college degree to take a free course at Udemy. Udacity, Coursera, all these sites offer inexpensive or free courses that you can learn an introduction to the iPhone operating system or an introduction to basic cybersecurity hygiene on the internet. All these types, or even the basics of how to build a digital app. You can learn, how do people build apps? What's the platform? How do they use that? You can take those courses for free. And again, if you have access to a phone or a laptop, Chromebook, or whatever device you're using, you can get to those and, in order to learn that material. And then last but not least, I would say would be organizations. I Googled some options just in case this topic came up. You take, for instance, AARP. So you got your parents, your grandparents, people that are members of AARP, they're retired. Well, on their website, they've got a host of amazing resources that I looked at. It was like, wow, that's cool, where they walk through what does it mean to have antivirus on your laptop? What does it mean to secure your bank card if you've been hacked? Or what are some things you can do to not be scammed on Facebook? Encourage your family members and people in your community to actually go and take advantage of those resources. They're trusted. I mean, I read it, so I can tell you that a lot of the information, it makes sense. They may not, who is AARP? They're not, technology experts, but they've pulled and curated this material from somewhere where it's valid. And it goes back to the point that I want to make about that trust. A lot of people don't ask, a lot of people are not sure because of that trust factor when it comes to technology. I'm the same way. I need your, social, the last four and all this. I don't trust you. I'm not giving you that much information, but I'm surprised at how much people are willing to share over the internet about themselves, but they don't trust people enough to get information from them. So changing that mentality of feeling comfortable to know when to go to someone, when to ask for information, resources like, a couple of resources I mentioned were the Common Sense Media is one of my most favorites. I do workshops around their materials. When I give speeches, I talk about Common Sense Media. They have a huge repository of resources for high school, young children, the elementary school age, all the way up to senior citizens that cover all the topics I just talked about in very elementary terms. Like it's basic English, like this is what it is to have an iPhone versus an Android. This is what it means to have a Google account and versus another account. All those resources are available for free. In as much as people can access it, they can utilize the data to educate themselves. And if possible, take time to educate others. When you're having a game night or when you're having a family cookout, carve out some of that time to have a conversation about securing your Facebook page. You know, stop, forwarding things about, if you forward this to 50 people, Jesus is going to come down and, pay your bills. I mean, stop that, really educate and know that that is like spyware and that's antivirus. Those are things that are actually going to impact your family when you forward that. Thank you, bless you, uncle. I appreciate that. I need to be blessed, but I need you to stop sending that, and being real with these folks, because that is what opens up doors for your computer to be hacked, because they're not heeding the advice that they could get from these different resources.
I like that. So, either a tech party or at your reunion, have a little tech segment for the folks. I love that, man.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. You actually, I was going to ask you, you mentioned Common Sense Media. Are there other repositories, as you say, that have devices where people can acquire them for free or to low cost? A lot of areas we mentioned are impoverished areas.
Sure.
Folks, let's just be honest, at or below, just above, at or below the poverty line.
Yes.
Many of the scholars that we serve, our producer and I serve, are in that place where it is difficult to really to survive. But this is something that would help them. Are there places that donate tech?
That's a good question. Your local nonprofits, although they may not know, nonprofits can actually get discount equipment. So if you know of a church or some type of religious institution or a nonprofit in your community, even if it's not related to technology, if they're a bona fide approved 501c3, they're able to actually go to places like Best Buy or Samsung, and they have programs where they will donate or significantly discount those devices if they're given to that organization. And then that organization could then distribute them to folks in their community. They do the same thing with school districts. Again, it's a matter of time and effort. Someone's going to have to fill out the application. Someone's going to have to, receive the equipment, report back to Samsung and Best Buy on what happened. There's going to be work involved. It's not as simple as, hey, I need 50 Chromebooks and they're going to send them to you. They're going to want to know what you did with them. There's accounting behind that, but those programs do exist. The other thing that I've been sharing with some of the parents that I've been talking with is similarly, sites like Best Buy, Samsung, these digital marketplaces for these devices, they offer payment plans. I mean, so you don't even have to pay for it up front. And some of us may already be familiar with that because we're probably on a payment plan with our cell phones. But the same thing works for those other devices. So sometimes I get a little irritated. Maybe, I understand that people are living in poverty, regardless of their color or their situation. But if you've got the latest cell phone, you also could have got the latest Chromebook, because that was offered on the same site, but you didn't order that. So some of it's lack of knowledge and some of it's just prioritizing what it is that you're doing. So once you've paid off your cell phone, the next thing you need to do is invest in getting your child a Chromebook. Or putting that on a gift list. I've said that several times, like to my mom, when she was like, well, I'm like, what does my niece need? Or what does my nephew need for? Well, they want, this toy and that toy. I was like, I got something for them. And I sent them an iPad. I was like, I got something for them. And then my niece got mad. She's like, she doesn't like that iPad. I said, why? Because I locked it down. Because you can't get on all these other websites she wants to go to. But at the end of the day, now she can't take it away from her. Like every time she calls me, Uncle Chuck, can I take my iPad with me? Yes. Prioritize, spending, before you spend that money on a pair of Jordans, that I refuse to pay $300 for, buy them an iPad. You can get an iPad, a used iPad. You can get a used Chromebook for $300. So
say it again.
You can get a used iPad and a used Chromebook for about $200 to $300. The same price as Jordans.
Did you say before or after the Jordans? Which one?
Before.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Because the money that kid could make from selling stuff online could buy him a pair of Jordans.
About it.
And I'm seeing people doing it. If you got stuff you're selling, I know people who are into sneakers and they sell sneakers. They set up their own little eBay. Again, back to that access to what can technology do for you. You can set up your own marketplace to do those types of activities when you prioritize getting access to that technology. And again, I know some people are on that lower end where that may be a challenge, but getting the payment plan, working through a nonprofit. And again, I hate that I don't have specific ones, but generally most of these sites like Samsung and Apple who offer this, they do it through a nonprofit. So if you know of a nonprofit, they can go directly to those vendors and then the vendor could say, hey, what do you want? Like, hey, can you give me 50 free ones. We're doing an after school program. I've seen this stuff happen 10, 15 times over, and it blows my mind because they'll literally give it. It's nothing to them as long as you prove that you're a nonprofit and you show that it has added, benefit to your community. They're going to want the photo op. Don't get me wrong. They're going to call you, they want a picture with the kids and the iPads. But that's the least, in my opinion, that you could do to get access to those types of free resources, and not only locally, because these are global companies, not just in the DC metropolitan area, but all over the country. You have the ability to do that.
Well, I'm telling you, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I didn't want to get like heavy into the topic of like nonprofit. I mean, I definitely agree with what Charles has said. I just wanted to also put out there that part of the issue though with the nonprofit and reaching specific places is that dependent on the face of the nonprofit and who's applying for it, they tend to get some of the things a lot quicker than some of the other grassroots nonprofits and the other organizations that's going to actually get the devices to those who are, really in need or have the lowest, income at the end of the poll. So just wanted to definitely put that out there because we've tried. We've tried. I worked with an organization that tried. I mean, we actually collected gently used and old devices to be able to give out to kids once the pandemic hit. Just from to give them out. We worked with the organization here in Baltimore where a guy would fix old devices to bring them up to date. To me. So definitely that. But I mean, it's hard. But I definitely appreciate. You putting it out there, and I would definitely tell folks to Google is again the power of technology. Google these organizations that may have some of these things and are doing some of these things. Yeah.
And it is the power of connection. Don't get me wrong. Some of the organizations that I know that have benefited from that, like on the spot, new people within those organizations. So truth, full disclosure here, you're absolutely right. If you happen to know people, and again, I'm speaking from my experience working in Northern Virginia, we were very connected to these organizations because Google, Amazon, Samsung, they all have offices in the DC area, but they're based in Northern Virginia. So when we would create grants and opportunities to get funding for low-income communities in Northern Virginia, it was easy for us to know a person within the company that could make that happen. So again, it is about that relationship building that if you have, and I mean, sometimes it's as simple as if you know someone who works there, if you know a person who works at Amazon or know someone who works at Samsung, well, find a Black person who does. If you know someone, you're blessed to have them in your circle, they actually can then go to the company directly and say, and I've seen that happen, they'll go and say, hey, I'm working with this community group. I want to, because they're employee, they also have a little bit more leverage and pool to make that happen as well. So I would certainly recommend that too. If you scour your LinkedIn or just, word of mouth, reaching out saying, hey, this is a need we have, folks like myself, I'm happy to see who I can link you with. That also adds, value when someone can speak up for the organization within the company.
If you just joined us, we are on with the Cyber Jedi himself, Charles Britt, www.charlesbritt.com. I have to lift this gentleman, this brother, this advocate's name and his company, please. And he has not spoken about his company, by the way. I love it. This is the second week in a row, brothers. We had someone who had quite a platform and a whole lot of information and did not lift themselves not once. I'm going to do it. www.charlesbritt.com. Absolutely. The Cyber Jedi himself, founder of Cyber Jedi. But I'm going to call him the Cyber Jedi because to me, it just seems that he is the Cyber Jedi. So I'm going to call him the Cyber Jedi. Himself is with us. Absolutely. And Tyrone raises, but what Tyrone raised is part and parcel of what we're talking about. Depending on who you are, Stevie Wonder had a song called Cash in Your Face. It doesn't matter how much money, it's what you look like sometimes in order to procure, these things. And the organization that Tyrone worked with, it's exactly what he said. Everyone doesn't have that access. We do sometimes need allies, when there are just places, even in 2021, we're going to catch hell when we try to breach these places and organizations. But I am very happy that you're out there on the front lines, doing these things. I wanted to pivot really quickly to young people, technology, and the workforce. I'm kind of surprised. My daughter is one of them. who constantly consumes technology, but is not vaguely interested in technology as a source of income. Can you speak to that? How can we get our young people involved? There are quite a few Black and Latino pioneers in the tech field, not just now, but have been.
Yes.
Names escape me. But how do you encourage young people such as your niece and others into taking a good look at this lucrative, I know from my brother Jean-Pierre, this is a lucrative field, and an important one. I said it.
Well, this is where I sort of I do pump up my company and the work that I do, and that I do provide career coaching and workforce development consulting to organizations that are looking to start putting students, young people of color, into that pipeline of tech jobs. Helping them think through summer programming, helping them develop after school stuff. I work with local community centers, Boys and Girls Club, and then again, also the career coaching can be done one-on-one, where I've actually coached folks like, hey, I had a client the other day who works at a warehouse, and it's like, I'm tired of this, I can't do it no more. I heard tech is where the money's at. What do I need to do?
Wow.
And that's what I do through my company as part of my passion, because I love the work, as I just stated, and you've spoken to, but brother also got student loans. So at this, I'm trying to leverage, my skills and my passion, with also getting Sally Mae off my back. So with that being said, I use this to help these folks understand that, yes, I'm making really good money in tech. Jean-Pierre is making really good money. The folks that we graduated with are making really good money in tech. And we didn't necessarily know that this is what we were walking into. I wasn't sold, and I didn't get into tech because somebody told me I was going to make a lot of money. I got sold into tech because it was something I had interested in, and not necessarily understanding even what tech was. I just know I like working on computers. That was enough for me. Computers are cool. My counselor was like, well, good, we're going to put you down. You're going to be a computer engineer. All right, check. And I was out the door. But that looks different nowadays. You just can't have a kid say, like you said, your daughter's not interested in tech. Well, whatever she has a vocation for or an interest in can somehow be applied to tech in some way. I've challenged everyone. Every time I speak at a school, I'll say, name one job that is not impacted by tech in some way. And they name and I can tell them, well, that's what tech does to help that. That's what tech does for that. And then somebody said, well, how about, funeral home services? I says, well, now they're doing digital viewings at funeral services. So tell me tech doesn't impact, so there's no field out there, from medicine to telehealth to car salesman to whatever job that folks feel like they're going to eventually go into, tech is impacting that job in some way. So taking that skills and interest that your child has, no matter where it is, and then try to align that with a tech job is where they're going to get the best bang for their buck. Throwing out statistics, you wouldn't be a speaker if you did talk statistics. African Americans still make up 14% of the American population. I got the numbers here, 47 million of us. However, employees at companies like Salesforce, Facebook, Slack, let's take Salesforce, 2.9% of their workforce, Facebook, 3.8, Slack, 4.4, Microsoft, 6%, Blacks out of 100%. Work in companies that all these tools I just named, I'm sure you all are using in some shape, form, or fashion, but we're consuming it even through our own jobs. But these folks aren't employing enough of us. And you talk about, statistics. There was a report that I pulled down called Consumers to Creators, the Digital Lives of Black Consumers. This was done by the Nielsen Institute. 90% of Americans live in a household that owns a smartphone. 90% of us, but only 2% of us work at companies that put material on our phones. There's a huge need for us to fill these voids in these companies. And where the blame lies, you'll hear all types of things. First, you'll hear they're not hiring enough of us. Then you'll hear they're not graduating enough of us. There's truth in all of that. There's truth that they aren't necessarily hiring us. They aren't going to HBCUs to get us. There's also truth in that we're not producing enough. The latest report from 2016 showed that only 8% of folks with degrees in computer science and information systems were Black Americans, 10% for Latinos. So we're even at the bottom when it comes to graduating folks who are in it. And it does start with that level of interest, as you said. Whether or not we go into it is based on whether we're interested. It can't be the loans. Because I have friends who majored in communications. What is mass communications? What were you expecting to be when you got out of that program? You know, you majored in history. You're majoring in, I hear these majors and I'm like, you pay $70,000 for that? You know, so taking these kids back and young folks back to help them understand, if you're going to spend the money, if you're going to get the student loan, at least direct yourself to an educational program, whether it be through college, through your community college. There's even programs like Empower in Europe where you can go through where you don't even have to incur that amount of student loan debt. You just have to have the interest. And like you said, that interest starts with the youth and it starts with the people around them. So of course, I've already tried to push my niece to have an interest in tech in some way, whether that's what she goes into. Amazon's got a huge distribution center in the city of Indianapolis. I don't want her working the warehouse at Amazon. I don't. She needs to be behind the scenes coding, because if she can use that iPad I got her, she needs to be coding at Amazon, not packing boxes at Amazon. The robots are doing a good job of that already. They don't need her. So the same thing goes for people in our community. Again, those conversations that we talked about at the cookout, at the game night, talking to our kids about the importance of going after tech jobs and where that education is and connecting with people in their network. You don't even know what a person in tech looks like until you befriend one. So introducing them to folks that are in tech. No, I'm not the coolest person in the world, I'm gonna admit. I don't wear the latest, Jordans and all that other good stuff, but I'm a cool person to chat with. You know what I'm saying? If you wanna know about tech, you wanna know about jobs, you can connect your youth with me. But if you're constantly putting them in contact with people that are gonna get them in the latest basketball camp and the latest, this and that they're doing during the summer, I'm okay with that, and that's fine. Everyone has their own aspirations. But at the end of the day, I hate to see parents who come back to me asking me about my coaching services when their child has graduated in history and can't find a job when I pitched you my business before they even went to college.
Well, and to your point, look, I said this last show, Mr. Britt, John and I, and I'm not sure about Tyrone's shoe game, a tennis shoe game, but the brother can dress. The point is, style and fashion, all that stuff is great. But I tell my students, you have to look past that, especially when we don't own that. And so let's move from, and I understand, look, most of us here had jobs where we were not the heads of payroll, and we weren't the owners, right? Still is the case today. We're getting paid by someone that's outside of our community. Okay, fine. But then let's also pump up Cyber Jedi. Let's look into where we can carve our own. We're just talking about the sad tragedy of the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombing, terroristic explosion that happened there. Mm-hmm. Well, the effects of that can't just be a memorial. There's still, unfortunately, a lot of those early assaults on our people have long-lasting effects over time. And so we have to create our own venues. We have to create our own pathways to this technology. We can do it. Everything that, one thing I've been saying to myself probably the last 10 years, to my not only my children, but my students. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is you want to be, you can find someone in our community that does it and does it well. It's not all over the television. You're right. It's Jordans, it's basketball, it's sport, it's entertainment. Nothing wrong with that. Those things have their place.
They do. Yes.
But like you said, we have to look past that or make room, for some other things that'll help us become more and more productive.
Yeah. And as they say, seeing is believing. And so you've seen someone who's done these things. And again, you mentioned articles, there's organizations like Black Girls Code, Black Women Tech Talk. I'm looking at a list of organizations right here that I've heard about. Black Tech Unplugged. Another organization I love is Blacks in Technology. They're actually based in Canada, but they have a global presence and they do a lot to promote Blacks in tech. We're out there. We are, and I'm impressed. I've been up to a lot of virtual events with these groups over the last, year through the pandemic, and even I was inspired. I'm like, man, a brother's a VP of what? He's the senior director of what at Facebook? We're out there, but we don't, like you said, often put a spotlight on those folks because we're too busy, spotlighting what everyone else to see, what's popular. And again, entertainment has its place, but we need to find a way to also infuse access to these other pioneers and folks that are leading the way in tech. These folks fought hard, and I'm sure went through a lot to get to these roles in these organizations. They need to see someone who looks like them, and we have to be also in a position to want to give back. Like you said, I volunteer to do these talks. I volunteer to do the podcast as a way of giving back to say, hey, you too can make it. You too can do it. But, you've got to be willing to want to put in the work. These jobs do exist. They do take some effort. You're not just going to go out and quickly get a CISSP or A+ Security Plus certification. It's going to take some work. And, you have to be willing to get the right folks around you to help you get through that, the right folks in your network. I've been talking to a lot of college students that are disappointed. I didn't get an internship this summer. I didn't, I get it. I had an internship my first year in college. I was fortunate enough to be able to experience that. Not everybody does, but you're doing the right thing. I told them, keep expanding your network on LinkedIn, keep talking to folks. You'll get it. It's not the end of the world, but it does dishearten me when I do see people of other colors bragging on LinkedIn about how their child got a job and how their child has an internship. And I'm like, man, we got to be there for our people as well. And I've been there to create, like you said, having those conversations, but then also linking with positive minded organizations and people that can build programming. We got to do this, boot camp style. We got to get these kids in, do camps with them, do things where they're constantly exposed to the technology and to the opportunities, because I've seen it. Once their eyes are open to what they can do and how it connects to their everyday lives, you're not going to get all of them. I've done tons of these programs. Every kid's not going to be interested, and that's okay. But that handful, that 2, that 3, that 4, that 5, I'm excited, because that's just 5 more, that's 6 more times, however many places we can do this, that are now going to be diversifying the field in such a way that we don't have to keep having this conversation about the digital divide. We as a community will solve the digital divide ourselves. We'll find out a way to get Wi-Fi in our community. We'll find out a way to get Chromebooks. There are challenges associated with that, and I get it. I saw in the communities I work with, even in Northern Virginia, and they're wealthy. Per capita income is over 350,000, but still within people, Latino and Black communities in that same area, I'm like, what? What are we dealing with? It's like, so it takes more than just me. It takes an effort of, like we were working with the Boys and Girls Club, the NAACP. It's a whole village effort to change these situations. And it's unfortunate, like you said, that it's not just there, it's happening all over the country. So the more that we can arm ourselves, come together like they did in Tulsa, that whole effort that those folks did to burn that down was to prevent the progress that they knew that was going to happen if we continue to expand that type of work. So we've got to take that same mentality of what we're doing and not just have a Tulsa here, but in every major city, where it's not just a common, a one city thing or one area. How can we ensure that everybody gets on this, this boat and, kills this digital divide? Take advantage and get rid of the digital divide.
Absolutely. Wisdom from the Cyber Jedi himself, Mr. Charles Britt. Going into our peaceful journey, Charles Britt, where we just give our last few words of advice and wisdom and peace to our Triple Crowns Royal family. We'll start with Brother Tyrone, because he has to make an exit. Brother Tyrone?
You know what? Brother Charles has said a lot of things, but y'all know I'm big on educating our people. I say that all the time. So I just want to add to that and follow up with that, is that educating your folks, and every little bit that passing that on to somebody else, and they'll eventually pass that on to somebody else. It will help. Thank you, bro, for being here and coming and sharing your knowledge with us today. I appreciate it. And I've definitely took some things that I can take and pass on to a couple of people as well to help out with what we're doing here in Baltimore to try to close the digital divide.
Thank you, Brother Tyrone. John, before we we definitely want to lift up our esteemed guest here, man, who just blessed us. And I feel blessed. I feel empowered by this brother's wisdom and his humility. But John, peaceful journey words for Triple Crowns family that's out there.
Hey, I'm just grateful around to be able to be surrounded by great people. Everybody that I know is not in the same economic situation, but that doesn't change how I feel about everybody, right? I love them all the same. I'm going to give them whatever I can to help them get to where I am. If not, I'm going to try and throw them past where I'm at. I just want everybody to be able to reach back and pull each other up. And Charles has done that for me in my time, in our friendship, and our brotherhood, and our relationship. I appreciate him. I appreciate all of you. I hope everybody reaches back, reaches to the left, to the right, reaches up. Just let's keep pushing each other to be greater, to be better, and to be more innovative. We can do it. You know, we all have kids, talk to each other's kids, cookouts, birthday parties, grocery store, parking lot, whatever, man. Wherever I see you and we rap, it's always a great conversation. And I hope that we all continue these conversations, but realistically, let's do some action. We've been talking for about several decades now. It's time to act. I think it's way past time. And I think we got to be acting now. We got to be doing, because we're not doing enough. If we're still here and we're still talking about it, where's the work being done?
Yeah, absolutely. Brother Charles Britt, any final thoughts and words? Please lift up your company. I know you're humble, but please lift up your company as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Will do. Brothers, I appreciate the opportunity. John, JB, of course, everything to you. We have history. And although we don't keep in contact, you are always someone who I know is like family. Like you call me brother. We're like brothers. And I appreciate this opportunity to share with you all. My website is basically my name, www.charlesbritt.com. And there you'll learn about the work that I've done. It's sort of a portfolio of what I've done, but also you can get information about my career coaching and also consulting services that I offer to nonprofits and other groups that are looking to connect youth to tech workforce development, opportunities. And all these things that I'm talking about can come in and work with you to develop after school programs and training and things of that nature. So again, thank you all. The Cyber Jedi is the name of the company, but again, my website is charlesbritt.com. And so again, this has been awesome. You can feel free to reach out there or also on social media. I am Charles Britt on Twitter. And then of course you can Google my name on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me.
Yeah, and John, I love the moniker is too slick, man. And this guy says he's not cool. I don't know what he's talking about. Cyberjet. I mean, what are you talking about, Mr. Britt? I love that.
Helping a brother in our community. Senior Marketing is who did that for me. So
okay.
I asked for branding and they delivered.
They sure did. They sure did. Those to Charles's friends that haven't been listening, y'all going to Geek Squad and all that. Listen, let me tell you something, Brother Charles. There's a scripture that says a prophet is not honored in his own country. So, brother, it's all right. People do me the same way too. Yeah, I wanted to play guitar. Oh, well, what did you do? I went to YouTube, but well, you knew me. I could have told you something. It happens. It happens.
Stop it. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, listen, we've been blessed, man. Charles, if you wouldn't mind, between you and John, could you put together just a quick, not now, just a resource list? I was taking notes as you were talking, so we can put it out there to the family, and hopefully people will watch this show, because this has just been impactful, man. I'm really full, and I thank you so much for being here. And to the Triple Crowns World family, thank you all for tuning in. I heard there was 3 of y'all. Love y'all. The 3 that was with us. It was each one teach one, as we used to say back in the day. But may the Most High bless you, keep you, cause his face to shine upon you. Until we see you next time, be blessed, be peace. And my brother said, always walk in love. Peace, y'all.
Peace.